mortgage solutions, and I'm here with Matt from the real estate firm. As the expert in real estate, I wanted to have a chat to you about hints and tips that you can share with us around what to look for in investment property, or any little gems that you can share with us.
So tips for buying an investment property. It all comes down to your motivations and what you're looking for in a property. So what I mean by that is, if you're looking for something to retire to by the beach, an apartment down the coast is going to be, that mindset is going to be very different to buying a house in a suburb that you live in where you're chasing a yield or a capital growth. It's a motivation thing there. So the first thing is knowing what you're wanting out of an investment property and what you want it to do. Second, do your research. Look at the areas, the suburbs. If you're familiar with the suburb, if you're not, do a lot of research. If it's outside of where you live or outside of the city that you live in, especially, do a lot of research and make sure you're comfortable with the area, and look at all the statistics around the area, what the capital growth is like, what the economics of the area are like. Things to particularly look out for is things like redevelopment, what's happening in the area in the way of development, what's the council doing with infrastructure, is there a new busway going in, is there a new shopping centre being built, all those things that tend to lead to population growth and an increase in activity. That's always a good sign for capital growth. I suppose the other thing is rental income. If you're looking for yield, what you're going to achieve each property in particular, what the rental income is going to be, how that's all going to work with your loan and everything like that, and what you're wanting to do, if it's going to be negatively geared or positive cash flow, whatever it is that you're after, make sure the rental stacks up. And lastly, look at the house itself and the fundamentals of it. Have a good look at, is it structurally sound? Is it going to appeal to a lot of tenants? You really got to look at it as something that isn't emotional. You're not going to be living in it, so you've got to not be emotional about it and just look at the fundamentals of it and if it's going to rent well.
So you don't necessarily have to love the property?
No, not at all. It's probably a good tip not to love the property.
In this area, what are renters looking for in a property? Is it your typical 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom type thing?
In this area specifically, this area is very family focused and family orientated. So from a rental side of things, we find a lot of people have kids at the local schools, so proximity to school. And then for the parents themselves, how are they getting to work every day? What's the traffic and congestion like? Are they going into Brisbane, down the coast? All those sorts of things, and how do they get there?
And so the benefit of you is you can also then lease the property and take care of the management for the people that are buying investment properties?
Yeah, correct.
As far as tips for management of your property, I've heard some horror stories, but you don't usually hear the good stuff. So what is it that you do differently when you're managing a property for a client versus the horror stories you see on A Current Affair?
Oh God, okay. I don't know what the horror stories are. So what people are looking for in a property manager, I think the biggest thing we tend to see or hear is communication. Communication is the biggest thing that people want. So yes, you have to know what you're doing, you have to have experience, and you have to know the legalities and all the rest of that comes with property management, but communicating both with the owner and the tenant is a big thing. A lot of times we speak to investors and owners of investment properties, and their biggest gripe is that they haven't heard from the property manager. So that's the biggest thing, I think, is just communication, letting everyone know what's happening, where it's all at, routines, what work to do. And I suppose one of the good things that we do as well is we also look at it from a selling point of view as well. So while it's an investment, we also reevaluate the sales potential of it and how you can exit out of it if you want to. So, is it a good time to sell now as opposed to waiting? What do we have to do to the property to maintain it and keep it up to date? So if you do want to sell it later on, this is how you go about it, and it makes it easier. So that's probably a good thing, is when we're not, while we are very focused on the property management, we also have a sales focus as well, so we can guide on both directions.
And what about people that are purchasing a property purely for investment? Have you got any hints or tips on what they could do or what they should consider when they're putting in an offer, if it's purely going to be for an investment?
Yeah, so I mean, it'll all revolve around the numbers. For one, for the offer itself, like I say, it's not going to be emotional, it's going to be numbers based. So that's the first thing when making the offer. And then it will depend, if it's already an investment property, it might already be tenanted, so it's just a straight changeover. If it is an owner occupier and it will be vacant possession, you can then try to lease it, you want it leased as quick as possible. So in some instances, you may be able to negotiate that you can actually start advertising and get a tenant lined up and ready to go. So as soon as you settle on it, you can have it rented from day one, so you've got no vacancy. All those sorts of little things can be negotiated as well.
So if you are in the market looking for an investment property, then Matt's definitely the person to call, especially when you want a good property manager and someone who's going to keep you in touch with sales in the area and how your investment's doing. But also I would encourage you to have your budget in place. So you can do a budget, and I encourage my investor clients to put a budget in place as though they're renting the property, assuming that it goes unrented for a couple months in the year, just to make sure that they can afford the debt and to make sure that they're comfortable with it. So that would probably be my hot tip. Really nerdy, I know, but make sure you do your budget, make sure you're happy with the investment, and factor in for it if it gets unrented for a little bit there.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Other than that, that's it from me, and thank you so much for coming along today.
No worries, thank you.
I'll see you guys later.